But let's jump over to this. We got breaking news. So I was actually, this is why I got distracted, because I got a notification on my phone. We have this from the Hodge twins. It's actually a Veritas video breaking leaked audio of Twitter. All hands reveals employees press leadership over what free speech means. A plan for mass exodus due to Elon Musk's questionable ethics and questioning if President Trump will return to the platform. Shout out to James O'Keefe and Project Veritas. Elon Musk, you need to reinstate them immediately as soon as you gain control of the company. Let's play this video and see what's going on.
Mr. Musk plan on dealing with a mass exodus, considering the acquisition is by a person with questionable ethics.
The question of attrition, as Parag stated, one of the themes of today is continuity. And ensuring that Parag and this leadership team continues to operate the business successfully on behalf of our users, on behalf of our customers. And that has obviously been a big topic of discussion at the board. And as I mentioned, an area that is important to Elon Musk as well, because of the importance of Twitter as a service.
With no board in place, who will keep Elon accountable and how? Elon made it clear in public that a large part of the reason he bought the platform was because of our moderation policies and disagreements in how we deal with health. This puts Twitter service and trust and safety, as well as anybody who cares about health on the platform, in a very difficult position.
Twitter service, the role of our policies, and the capabilities we've built around content moderation are fundamental to keeping Twitter safe and growing. I believe that there is a lot of work we have to do to continue making that better.
I want to pause real quick in the middle of this. We got another minute, but I just want to point out conservatives are willing to stay on the platform when they're getting censored and the left is getting away with it.
Yeah.
The left is unwilling to stay on the platform if conservatives aren't getting censored. So Twitter saw the formula. You can ban a conservative and most conservatives stay. You ban a liberal, they freak out and revolt. Only ban the conservatives. This is evidenced by the fact that by sheer fear that Elon might bring Trump back, they're leaving the platform. I say it this way. When you had the weak parent in charge of Twitter and the little kid was screaming, I want an ice cream cone or I'll hold my breath, Twitter's Parag Agrawal and Vijay Gadde were like, okay, just stop screaming and I'll give you the ice cream. Elon Musk is the dad being like, okay, go hold your breath outside and I'll have the ice cream inside. You're not getting ice cream. But let's play more.
And now they're going, I'm running away from home.
And he's like, good, bye.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Sometimes that means more thoughtful moderation. Sometimes that means making things simpler. Sometimes that means changing product incentives to be able to solve problems through products sometimes instead of policies.
During the last All Hands, you said that you trust Elon Musk. The correct quote was, we trust him. So who is we? And talking to Elon, what made you trust him?
And based on the conversation I had with him when we were excited to have him join our board, that was because as a major shareholder and an opinionated user, we wanted that voice in our boardroom so that we could learn.
Is there an updated understanding on what free speech means?
The question behind the question here, which is where might Twitter's product go as a private company in the future once this deal closes? To best gain perspective on this, as I said earlier, we'll find ways to bring Elon for a Q&A with all of you to understand better what his vision for the future of Twitter might look like.
I wouldn't say anything outright or overtly crazy other than these people are blind, completely clueless, and they're right. Elon joining the board was an opinionated outside perspective that would help them, but they blocked him. So him coming in and just saying, I'm taking it over, good, shake it up a little bit.
They have ideological blinders. They talk about moderation policies. They don't have moderation policies. They have extremist policies that are driven by censorship of views that they don't like. They talk about safety, but almost all their rules on safety dealing with the COVID outbreak turned out the science wasn't on their side over time. Drugs that they said didn't work actually worked. The CDC was wrong on masks. The CDC was wrong on the effects of the immunizations on people.
We have to be a little specific, though. I think the issue is that Twitter decided one doctor was better than another doctor.
Correct.
When they shouldn't be doing that. YouTube takes a similar position in that YouTube's decided the same doctors that Twitter sided with are the correct doctors, and this is the problem. YouTube, you are not correct. However, I will say on the mask thing, in what context were you referring to the CDC mask things?
They were first saying masks aren't needed.
Right.
And then they don't work. And then they said they're needed. And then we found out that the masks were not effective against the size of the virus.
But it is
and then it evolved up and down over time. Okay. So it was just strange, and it lost a lot of confidence of people in the CDC on that issue.
I think the most important point is that early on, Twitter was on the side of don't discuss lab leak theory. Mm-hmm. And they were also on the side of when Dr. Fauci came out in March of 2020 saying don't wear masks, Twitter was on his side. And he was wrong about that. He came back out later and says, okay, maybe you should wear masks. And Twitter just flips with him. I'm like, you cannot build confidence with people if you can't give them a cohesive set of instructions on what the plan is. They would just come out and say, oh, well, the science changed. Okay. Well, I think, I don't know where we're at with the pandemic. YouTube has goofy rules. I think it's fair to say in addressing those goofy rules, masks stop you from spitting on people, so they have a certain degree of effectiveness.
Okay, so the sanitation issue, it turns out that getting it from touching something, okay, you have a 1 in 10,000 chance of it being transmissible, okay, if you touch a contaminated surface. But we were first told that if you touch a surface, you have a high chance of getting it, and everyone was cleansing everything. People were cleaning the canned goods coming back from the grocery store based upon CDC guidance. It turned out that was wrong. It created hysteria. Subway cars were being sanitized every day, multiple times, but it wasn't necessary.
Yeah, this is from this conversation, the obsession with health and the obsession with safety is really disturbing. It sounds like rhetoric, and maybe this isn't the conversation to have, the ethical conversation, but compared to the board meetings we would have at Minds and the conversations, this is complete insane rhetoric where you're like, yo, if you're going to spin this word around the house like this, you better, let's talk about what it means.
Well,
Amen.
Let's come back to one point she said on there. Free speech. What does free speech mean? Free speech means free speech, except yelling fire in a movie theater, right?
You're allowed to do that.
You're allowed to do that.
You're allowed to yell fire in a movie theater.
If it's empty.
No, you're allowed.
Oh, but you can be
If
punished
there's fire.
for it.
No, you can't.
Oh.
So this was actually reversed, I think, in like 1968. So it's Brandenburg v. Ohio, I think.
Okay.
The initial ruling in the early 1900s was that, well, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, and the Supreme Court overruled that, saying, yeah, you can. You actually can do that.
Can you go into a restaurant and be like, there's rats all over the place, and then everyone runs out of the restaurant and doesn't come back?
That's not a criminal issue. That's a civil tort issue for you lying.
Same with fire?
You'd probably get sued by the business, but it's not a matter of law. It's not a matter of criminal law.
But let's go back. She's a leader at the organization, I assume, and she's saying, well, what is free speech?
Well, this was her. She was relaying a question from employees.
Also,
so the woman was getting questions, and she was asking the CEO.
It's indicative that they still don't know what it is if they're still asking the question.
Also, I believe when Oliver Wendell Holmes said you can't shout fire in a crowded theater, he was using that as a justification for censoring people who were protesting the First World War.
Yeah. Yeah, and that got overturned, I think it was like 1968.
Yeah.
So they'd go into a theater and yell just to get people riled up?
No. So they were not actual. He was using it as an analogy. They were passing out flyers that protested the First World War, and they ruled that you shouldn't be able to do that. And his justification is, well, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, so you can't do this either.
Some people are pointing out that Parag Agrawal was not born in the United States. And so the CEO who is dictating our speech that's very problematic, that someone who isn't from this country. My response to that is Elon Musk was also not born in this country and would also be dictating speech in this country. So, either way, you've got that problem. So is it an issue? I suppose the issue is, are our values being upheld? And Twitter, you know what I think Twitter is? It is, you guys ever play the game Life Genesis on old Windows 95?
Negative.
You don't remember that one? Mm-mm. So it's a bunch of little dots, little squares, pixels that interact with each other in unique ways, and it creates it creates patterns based on certain rules. And in the version I had, you had two colors. Basically, if you have 100 blue pixels and you drop one red into it, the red gets engulfed instantly. It just becomes blue. That's what Twitter is. Twitter is 98.7% Democrat voting, Democrat donating. Anybody who goes in there and is conservative is crushed instantly. Their ideas don't make it anywhere. You're not going to be sitting in a Twitter meeting and they say, how do we deal with this problem of harassment? And be the lone conservative being like, it's not harassment. What are you talking about? You're going to keep your mouth shut because you're one out of 30 people. And they'll harass you. They'll take your job from you. So you do nothing. All of the policies then start moving further and further to the left and going insane. And so the people at Twitter genuinely do not understand how insane they've driven themselves. As I've often described it, Jack Dorsey built a big toilet and then stuck his mouth on the end of it and started eating the refuse he created. I know it's a crass way to describe it, but this is what happened. People went on Twitter, started saying insane things to get traffic. The more insane they got, the more Jack himself was surrounded by the insanity that he had welcomed. So what happens then is I'm sitting down with Jack and Vijaya and Joe Rogan. And I said, yeah, your rules are overtly biased. Your rules outright. And Jack says, no, they're not. And I was like, you have a misgendering policy. You can't see that is an outright biased rule that conservatives are confused by? And he was like, but we're trying to help people who might be suicidal. And I'm like, you're not helping body dysmorphic people. You're not helping transracial people. No, you live in a bubble. You live in a bubble you can't see out of. So you've enacted policies that are insane to the average person.
And that's for a minuscule percentage of the population. You're changing all the norms for a minority of the population.
But we're talking specifically, I would say the minority is the leftists. It's not even Blair White is a trans person. Blair White doesn't agree with what these people are saying. It's not even an issue of, in my opinion, trans issues. It's an issue of ideology. So what happens is you have white progressive liberals who claim everyone else is racist. They claim Candace Owens is a white supremacist. They claim Larry Elder is the blackface of white supremacy. It is their fringe ideology that is dominating and getting these rules made. It's not even an issue of, are black people upset over racism? Yes, many are, but they're not the ones enacting these changes. They're not the ones going into Twitter and demanding Twitter do these things for them. Some activists are, some aren't. It is this weird fringe cult that is going in and making rules for everybody else while believing that they're the white saviors.
And you also have the issue of the trans agenda, which is trying to groom people that have dysphoria or issues or might be migrating to being actually gay and say you're not actually gay, you are trans. And you need surgery, and you need
But again, though that's white progressive women doing that.
Correct. Yeah.
It's not so a lot of people bring up the idea of like a trans agenda or whatever, and I'll say okay in the context that doesn't refer to an individual who is transgender. It refers to the cult, because when you see a video of a white liberal woman who is a straight married woman, but she's talking about how she wants to teach kids these things, it's an issue of the cult, white. Weird progressive fringe politics. I believe social media has wrapped them into a bubble of insanity where they push policies that regular people think are insane.
I want to make it, it's possible I'm being pedantic with myself here. I want to make a slight correction. The 1919 court case we were referring to about yelling fire in a private theater, it wasn't even the person protesting the First World War. I looked it up to double check. They were just protesting the draft in the First World War. So it's even worse than that. But I wanted to point that out. And Sam, I hear what you're saying, but I think it's fair to call it the trans agenda because even though not every single person who's considered to be transgender is on board with it, it seems to be how they're unified and behaving as a political force.
That's what I'm saying. If you're saying it's an agenda to encourage transgender or gender ideology, sure. If you're saying it's a trans agenda as if transgender people are the ones behind it, I would say I disagree with that because for one, the transgender community is very, very small. And if you go on Twitter and if you look at these videos, it is typically like white liberal women. However, there are many non-binary individuals who are advocating for this stuff too. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying I think it's important to call out the ideology while recognizing we're friends with Blair White, who's amazing and doesn't agree with them.
We also have a similar situation with white liberals, male and female, pushing the immigration agenda. That is not the dominant theme or the dominant issue for the Hispanic community in this country, regardless if they're from South America, Cuba, Puerto Rico, or any place else, okay? It's being pushed by the white liberals.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I should mention this. Of the Hispanic people I have met who are legal immigrants, they are not fans of illegal immigration. So the idea that like this is an issue that is being pushed by Hispanic voters as a bloc is ridiculous. You're right. Very often it's white liberals who want to pat themselves on the back.
virtue signaling.
Or big businesses that want cheap labor.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.